In 1976, country singer Johnny Sands was in Las Vegas, Nevada, promoting his latest record. Sands was a pretty accomplished country singer, appearing on the Today Show, and also singing in shows with country music legends like Charlie Daniels and Merle Haggard. In addition to this, Sands also worked as a stuntman, magician, and escape artist. However, there would be no escape from what came for him. In January 1976, his case is considered quite credible, as hundreds would see UFOs in the sky that night, and Sands would pass a polygraph as well. In this episode, we will examine this close encounter of the third kind, the case of Johnny Sands. On January 29th, 1976, Johnny Sands hopped in his car leaving Las Vegas so he could drive and promote his record and also explore some older western towns. After a long day, Sands left the town of Pahrump, located about an hour outside of Las Vegas, and began heading home around 10 p.m. Sands hopped on the Blue Diamond Road, and around 10:30 p.m. he would spot a strange craft in the sky. He was pretty preoccupied at the moment though, thinking about his music, and initially ignored the craft. The craft would then follow him for around 3 miles, when suddenly his engine started sputtering, and he pulled over on the shoulder. He started checking the car, making sure he wasn't out of gas, or there wasn't a problem with the engine, and at that moment, forgot completely about the UFO. Then, Johnny Sands would see something he would never forget. Around 1,000 feet in the air, Sands spotted the craft. It was around 60 feet long, oval-shaped, and had a burnt orange color. As well, it had a large ring around it. In the ring, there were portholes around 10 feet in diameter and around 5 feet apart. Between each porthole, there was a light and lights on the end, flashing white. The craft moved over a nearby mountain, lighting up the entire area. At this point, Sands was pretty scared and decided to get back to work, fixing his car. He tried removing several things and inspecting them, but had no luck. Then he turned back around, and he spotted several humanoids in his headlights down the road. In a frightening turn of events, Sands froze and couldn't move. It appears the beings had paralyzed him. The beings then approached, with one coming around 3 feet away, while the other stopped at about 5 feet. The beings were around 5'8", 140 pounds, and looked incredibly strange. Sands would state that these pale creatures had something on the sides of their face that resembled gills. Even more odd, the gills seemed to move incredibly quickly on their face. They were bald, with no eyebrows, and had small black eyes with white pupils, and also had a flat nose, which Sands would compare to a pug's nose. The skin was extremely wrinkled, something we see in other cases like this. The beings wore silver coveralls that had a white strap that ran from their shoulder to their waist. They also had another belt around their waist with different types of gadgets on them. What happened next would truly be shocking. A conversation would ensue, with Sands asking some questions and the beings asking some as well. They communicated through telepathy. It's important to note at the time the APR report was written, the beings would threaten Sands, saying if he revealed the whole conversation of which occurred, they would come for him. In a later interview with Brent Rains, around 30 years later, Sands would reveal the details he was asked not to discuss. According to Sands, for around a 10-minute period, the beings and Sands would communicate, with Sands asking the first question, "Where did you come from?" The beings pointed up to the sky and didn't say a word. The being would then ask Sands what he was doing there. Sands responded he was in Las Vegas and doing a record, and that he was a country music singer. The creature then asked, why were so many people in Las Vegas? Sands stated it was a tourist town and that people came to Las Vegas from all over. Sands was then asked, what is your means of communication? He didn't understand the question really. The being seemed to become angry and stated, answer the question. Once again though, a frightened Sands repeated that he didn't understand the question. The humanoid turned to the other at this point, and the beings seemed to be communicating something to one another, although it's not clear what. This lasted 2 to 3 minutes. It should be pointed out once again the being's mouths didn't move, and they communicated with Sands through telepathy. The beings then turned around and warned Sands once again about seeing them, stating, "Don't say anything about this meeting. We know where you are, and we'll see you again." In the interview with Brent Rains in 2009, Sands would state that being pulled out a small ball that grew into the size of a basketball and had sparks flying all around it. Next, the being said, "You see, nuclear explosions are causing a problem in the solar system. These things that you're setting off on this Earth are causing troubles not only for you, but for us, and we cannot have this kind of thing to continue because it's going to upset the balance of everything that we intend for the future." Sands was confused as he was an entertainer and didn't know almost anything about the topic. He next asked if the beings were evil, to which it responded, "Harm comes from evil." Sands would ask their age, to which the creature responded, "We are before the beginning of what you know as time." The being would go on to say they would see him again in time, and he would understand the reason. It doesn't appear that the beings kept their promise, as the 2009 interview with Brent Rains didn't reveal further contact. After the 10-minute conversation, they walked off into the night, and a white flash lit up the sky. The beings then disappeared. After this, Sands went to the Air Force Base in the area and was referred to the APRO. There he would converse with John Romero, who would ask him to take a polygraph. At the time, Sands was in a bit of a predicament. Hundreds, possibly thousands, saw strange lights that night, and word was circling around town around his experience. Sands didn't want people to think his story was all a publicity stunt and had to manage telling his story along with also promoting his record. Eventually, the APRO would arrange for him to take a polygraph with Dr. R.L. Nolan and pass. Dr. Nolan was an FBI agent with over 27 years of experience administering the test. One interesting thing did happen in the test, though. The test showed that Sands was holding back something. It's important to point out he was not lying. For decades, Johnny would not talk about some of the things the beings asked him not to discuss. Decades later, according to Johnny Sands, the beings would tell him that night that the governments and militaries around the world were aware of their existence. It's important to note the beings didn't say what the relationship was between the two. What can we make of this incredible close encounter of the third kind? There's quite a bit to unpack from this case. Probably the first thing to note here is that the being's appearance was definitely strange and not the typical gray or Nordic alien. That said, there are other cases with people reporting very wrinkly beings, and of course many cases of entities warning about the dangers of nuclear weapons. There's quite a bit of supporting evidence, even though Sands was all alone. Many saw a UFO or lights in the Las Vegas area in the sky that night. Also, Sands passed a lie detector, and his story was considered credible by the APRO. In addition to this, Sands had a lot to lose, as he was doing well, and this could sink his career. Some debate this, though, as he was an entertainer and didn't have a career like a politician, which relied on reputation. One other similarity as well with the other cases we see is his car dying without reason. We see this time and time again. Still though, in examining the APR report versus the 2009 Rains interview, there does appear to be minor discrepancies. First, in the Rains interview, Johnny stated that the being spoke through telepathy. However, in the APRO report, it seems to imply the being's words came through them, like as if it was coming out of their bodies. It's important to note that the APRO report stated the entities did not move their mouths, and we might be misinterpreting the communication method in the report. One other thing to point out, there was no mention or worries around nuclear programs in the original APRO report. It's pretty well known in 2009 that ETs are concerned over nuclear weapons based on numerous reports. In all fairness, he may have been told to not discuss this though. Sands also stated he underwent hypnosis in the 2009 interview, but the APRO bulletin stated he did not and was afraid of hypnosis. Once again, though, he might have done hypnosis later on. Later, Johnny appeared to have some run-ins with the Men in Black. He stated on one occasion a man told him the gills from the beings were because the beings were semi-aquatic. The strange man would tell him that these beings were from around the star Sirius. Why was Johnny selected to meet the beings? There was never a reason given to him. However, we speculate that Johnny's heritage may have been a factor. Johnny Sands is a Native American, and perhaps with a culture very spiritual in nature, one of his ancestors had contact with the beings. Johnny Sands was no ordinary man. He worked as a stuntman, escape artist, singer, and much more. In 1983, he broke the world record for the fastest straitjacket escape artist in the world with a record speed of 79 hundredths of a second. In 2004, he stayed in a stainless steel glass topped casket that was submerged under 600 gallons of water and appeared at fairs throughout the eastern United States. He was inducted into the Houdini Hall of Fame in Niagara Falls. As a stuntman, he performed over 15,000 movie stunts, being in movies with legends like Elvis. Despite this, his night in Vegas in January 1976 would be the most significant event of his life. He still goes and stares at the sky, looking for the beings, and talks out loud, asking them to return and talk with him. Maybe one day he will speak with them once again.